What's up, everybody? Welcome in. This is Payoff Pitch, Action Network's MLB betting podcast. Tuesday, September 26th, our second to last regular season episode of the podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe. You might be thinking, why should I do that? The season's almost over. We will have you covered during the playoffs. We will have Payoff Pitch throughout the MLB postseason. I said this yesterday. If you didn't tune in, I kind of get it. There's only 4 games. There's 16 games today. And there's no football crossover, so maybe you do want to bet baseball today. But the point being is the plan, and this is very fluid, but bear with me. We're basically going to have a pod every day there's a playoff game during the playoffs in October. So we're going to keep very busy. Our written content side, DeBundo, Tanner McGrath here, they contribute on that front. Our other analysts that you've heard throughout the course of the year, written, audio, video, we're going to get you covered all October. So stay tuned for more details. Like I said, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to Payoff Pitch. Also, if you're watching on the Action Network YouTube channel, please subscribe to our channel if you like watching the show there. And give us a like on the video if you enjoy the show. So that's the housekeeping. 16-game slate today, fellas. Doubleheader between the Rockies and the Dodgers. Got to get all these games in. Got a week to go to squeeze these games in. I'm sure it's annoying for a team like the Dodgers who are like trying to rest guys, get a rotation right. The rotation is, of course, in shambles. We've documented that throughout the course of the year. So trying to get arms situated, but then again, they can probably just call someone up from AAA and get it figured out. So they play a doubleheader with the Rockies. Sweating win totals, RIP Phillies. DeBundo, that is my way to set you up to go first for a best bet.
Yeah, we'll get to the Phillies a little bit later, but my best bet is going to be the Red Sox Rays under 8.5, -115 at BetMGM. And this is all about the weather. You know, the drastic change in the run environment in the last week. We skipped fall, it appears. We went right from summer days to 50s and rainy on the East Coast here. I guess that's kind of fall. But
that always happens, though, I feel like.
Yeah, this is and it's all been rain for the last 5 days as the tropical storm moves, up the coast through Nova Scotia. We're left with northeasterly winds, which at Fenway Park means blowing straight in pretty hard, 10 to 15 miles an hour, drastically changes the run environment there. Look, Boston has played right up there with Coors and Great American Ballpark this year from a hitter-friendly perspective. But with that wind blowing in pretty hard from center, it's going to make a run scoring environment pretty difficult tonight. And I expect Zach Eflin to continue to dominate. He's been perennially underrated by the market. His xERA is, below his ERA, which is already pretty good, which is an indicator of just how dominant he's been. Doesn't give away any free passes. And I think one interesting thing you've seen with the Red Sox is they have, tried to make some changes to improve the defense. Some of the younger guys they're playing have been better defensively. So, their season-long metrics are really terrible from a defensive perspective, worst defense in baseball. But they've tried to improve that with some of the young guys here. So I'm a believer in that. And Zach Eflin, career high strikeout minus walk rate, continues to dominate. I continue to bet on him. So under 8.5 for me there.
What has did that open? That opened at 8.5, right? So it's down to 8. Would you play it at 8?
What's the juice on the 8?
Under -105.
Yeah, that's okay for me.
Just reading.
I would not play it past that.
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of you, I saw most of you last night when the football games were ending, that you were hopping in the app, taking advantage of some lines that you liked.
There is still a couple 8.5s out there as we record this. So
okay.
I do. I mean, it's not as a key number like a 9 or a 7.
Sure.
But I do like the hook if you can grab it on the 8.5 there.
Speaking of advantages, I saw this last night in the app. Everyone and their best friend from Action Network was betting the Marlins last night, and so did Tanner, which perfectly segues because Tanner he's just a Marlins guy. Why do you like the fish tonight, Tanner?
Before I get to that, I will say a lot of suppressed run environments today for weather watcher Anthony DeBundo.
He really, you know what? He could have used like a green screen in the background.
Yeah, we should get one.
I was ready for his hands to start like pointing to the cold fronts and all the fronts coming in.
I am a trained spotter with the National Weather Service. It's one of my favorite flexes. I took a course online and used to have a snowboard and a rain gauge that I used to like track all the weather stuff and then send the reports into the National Weather Service. So
are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
That's pretty cool.
I used to run a Twitter account back in high school where I would predict 2-hour delay, snow days, and even got to the point where all the teachers and even the superintendent of our high school were following it. So it was a pretty fun time back in the day. I don't do weather as much as I used to, but one of my side hobbies.
Well, you do when you go to the Phillies games.
Right. Oh, look, you never know when skills will come into play. I used to do, our school TV. I used to do like the weather forecasts with the green screen behind me. So, in a different world where I enjoyed it more and was better at science, I might have become a meteorologist. But instead, I became a sports writer for the Action Network.
The Mike Trout of baseball gambling.
Something about this area, man.
If you're looking at other suppressed run environments today, Anthony, I know you'll talk about a few of these, but Baltimore, Philly, Seattle, a lot of weather today. I am not taking any of those for my best bet because I am going with my Miami Marlins, my fish on the money line. I believe they're minus 130-ish is what I'm looking for. And yes, if you follow me on Twitter, at Tanner's Truth that I am the biggest Miami Marlins backer alive. And the reason why I'm on them today is that despite the fact that they lost their ability to hit southpaws for a minute in the middle of the season there, that seems to have come back. Top 10 WRC plus against southpaws in September, third best over the past 2 weeks. They've been good across the full season against left-handed pitching, and that seems to be really good right now. The Mets, meanwhile, average-ish numbers against the side, slowed down a bit more over the past few weeks, just 86 WRC plus since September 12th. So in a battle between two left-handed starting pitchers, it's pretty hard not to take my fish here, as I said, about minus 130 on the money line. And if you look at the starting pitchers, we've got Joey Lucchesi for the New York Mets, our man, with a 2.8 ERA and a 5.5 expected ERA on the back of a 9% walk rate and a lame duck batted ball profile. The Stuff Plus metrics hate him. 76 overall. Maybe that's because he throws a lot of changeups or the churve, as they like to call it. But his sinker, which is his main fastball and highest usage pitch, is only like 78 Stuff Plus, and that's pretty bad. And that's especially bad given the fish actually boasts the fourth highest team OPS against southpaw sinkers this season, 858. And a lot of this is small sample size stuff, but remember, he's still fresh off Tommy John. He had Tommy John, last year, 2 years ago? Meanwhile, the fish are starting Braxton Garrett. Brax having a weird year, some up and down, but he's coming off a pretty good four-start stretch here. 2 earned run over his past 22 innings pitched against the Nats, the Dodgers, the Brewers, these Mets. 19 strikeouts and 21 innings pitched, 101 Stuff Plus and a 125 Stuff Plus on the slider during that time. And that's good because it's really his main whiff pitch. It's what drove his insane midseason strikeout run. Well, it was an increase in his sinker slidage usage overall, combined with a better arm slot release point. All came together for a brief moment in time this year, but he looks good again right now, and I'll take that for one game here in late September. And while the numbers have been murky, I'm still power rating the Fish bullpen above the Mets because I still think the Mets bullpen is a joke, and I like the pieces that Miami has. Tanner Scott, Andrew Nardi, AJ Pook, David Robertson, all rested too after a Monday off day. I think the Fish have all the advantages here, starting pitching, offensive, bullpen, and motivational, given they're one game out of the third wildcard spot in the National League wildcard race. I like the Miami Marlins today on the money line.
So they've got to win out pretty much here, right? Down the stretch, the Marlins.
They're within a game.
They're one game out. Anything can happen. It's chaos in the National League wildcard race.
Wild. Yep. I mean, Reds are probably done.
Yes.
They would need a lot of help.
They have to win out.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they could, but 6 games in a row is hard to pull off. I think I agree. If you just go on the night before and wait for these openers, as we get into football season, this is something Zerillo and I have talked about. You're seeing the bookmakers getting a little bit lazier, not as tight with their lines, and you can find some pretty off lines. And the Marlins opened at one book minus 114 F5. I took that. We know what Joey Lucchesi is as a starter at this point. I know he had Tommy John, but before that, he was basically out of the majors. Couldn't find a job, was stuck in AAA, and he's kind of just a languishing AAA veteran. He doesn't have great stuff or great command. So what is he? Not much. So I agree with Tanner on the Fish. I'm rooting for I have a Fish to miss the playoffs ticket that I'm actually hoping to get in here, but I'm rooting for all of these teams to keep winning to help my Phils in the wild card series. So it should be a fun race. Cubs, Diamondbacks tied with one another. Marlins a game back. I think the Marlins have the breaker with the Cubs, but not the D-backs. So that will be interesting.
It might be both.
They have both.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'll double check on that.
Yesterday, neither of you were on, but BJ and Zerillo were here, and we discussed. There was only 4 games, so the game we picked to really discuss and pick apart was Houston-Seattle, with Verlander and Castillo on the mound. Astros had a half-game lead going in. Both of them agreed it was really a must-win for Houston because of Seattle's edge in the season series, 8-2 going in. Astros win last night, 5-1. Verlander was good. They got to Castillo early. So that sets up a really fascinating game today between the same 2 teams vying for the final wild card spot in the American League. We've got Christian Javier on the mound tonight, George Kirby for the Mariners. The Astros, DeBundo, are underdogs, short dog at plus 105 at BetMGM. And now the money has swayed in on Houston, 68% of the bets, 79% of the cash, according to the Action app. What's your angle on this game? Does Houston continue to play well after last night, or does Seattle? They've had their number all year, bigger sample size. What do you think?
I want to
fade the public.
Yeah, I want to mention one more thing about the Marlins. That is weather game too, Tanner. We're in New York, which means 15-mile-an-hour winds blowing straight in at Citi Field as well, and cold conditions, 60 degrees. All right, now as we get into this Houston game.
This game, by the way, is on TBS tonight, national TV game tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch it later tonight. I think Christian Javier might be back. I don't want to say that too soon or too loudly because I'll mush him, but the strikeout rate is trending up in a big way. And I think that's the big key for him. You know, we've discussed Javier ad nauseum. We have all bet him to win the Cy Young, and he stuck up the joint for the first half of the season. His rolling K per 9, if you look at just 10-game rolling K per 9, it got as low as 6.4. That is really bad stuff. That was late July for somebody who was striking out, well over 11 per 9 last year and was pitching like a reliever for 5 innings. Now his rolling K rate is back up to 10 again. And so he's had consistency. The Houston team always believed it was mechanical and not injury related, which is why he was struggling. They thought that there was something wrong with the mechanics that they could sort out that would kind of eventually figure it out. And they seem to have done that. 8 strikeouts against the Yankees, 5 against the Padres in 4 innings, 6 against the Royals in 5 innings. And his last outing, probably his best of the season, 11 strikeouts, 2 walks, 1 earned run in 5 innings against the Orioles. So I think you're seeing that the stuff plus has trended up a little bit, but more importantly, the whiff rates and the K rates are way up. So whatever it is with the mechanical issue, I think it makes him undervalued. I think it makes the Astros undervalued. So I took some under 8. I would play it at 7.5, minus 105 or less. I think that with the weather, this total is too high. And I think you're going to see, this is essentially a playoff game. So you're going to see Service and Baker manage it like so, very short leashes. And as a result, you're not going to see, Javier get a third time through the order potentially, unless he's pitching really, really dominant. And the same goes true for George Kirby. We know what Kirby has struggled the third time through the order, as he said so himself. So you're going to turn over to some pretty good bullpens as well. So I think it's just a very high run suppression environment. Happy to see the Astros get that win last night against Luis Overrated Castillo. But now the Astros go for it again. I took some plus 120 just before we hopped on here. I know somebody else bet it, moved the market, so it has come down a little bit, but I'm good with it down to plus 110, which I think there will be buyback on the Mariners throughout the day. So if you want to wait, there usually is buyback on a certain person's bets. So I would look toward the Astros, but need plus 110 or better. And I also bet the under. So that's my underdog and my fade the public play of the day, all wrapped into one.
Yeah, and by the way, yesterday it was BJ and Charlie. Zerillo wasn't here, but Charlie brought this up when they both gave out Houston. I think everybody was on Houston yesterday, at least from the company. One thing Charlie brought up, and you just hit on it, the Astros going into the series had a really substantial bullpen advantage, and the fact that they only had to use Abreu last night for an inning, 11 pitches. Verlander really carried them. So for a second straight night, they're going to have a rested bullpen. And Seattle didn't really have to unload much in terms of their arms last night, but that's something to note too. Even though the public's on Houston, Tanner, they've got a rested pen. Do you have an angle going against Houston? What do you think?
I mean, every time that Javier has taken the mound this season, I've basically just looked at the other side.
Yeah.
So I still lean Seattle here, but here's the problem. I mean, Anthony is right. I don't want to say Javier is back, but he looked so much better in that start against Baltimore. I watched that. I mean, he had 11 strikeouts over like 5 innings. He looked a lot. He looked just better. He looked more comfortable. He was generating those old whiffs that he used to. He wasn't getting barreled up consistently and constantly. And the Houston offense is just crushing the ball right now. They're crushing both sides. I'm not going to play either side. I think I can't really find value anywhere, but yeah, I would look Seattle if I had to.
If I'm just thinking out loud here, this idea just popped into my head, but and I don't have the odds board up, but we were talking off air about the American League and how the top 2 teams, the Orioles and the Rangers, really don't have pitching depth. Look, I love Kyle Bradish. I love Grayson Rodriguez, 2 rookies who are, at the end of really long seasons for them, who don't have a ton of experience and any experience at the playoffs. And then the rest of the rotation is kind of mediocre. The bullpen depth is shaky at best. The Rangers have like Jordan Montgomery and John Gray are carrying the rotation right now. The Scherzer is not to be expected to do much here in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. This might be the time to buy Astros futures. If Javier's really back, we know their bullpen can perform. We know they have the experience, but we also know that with Verlander, Javier, and Valdez, they are going to be probably the deepest pitching. Them in Minnesota, the 2 deepest pitching staffs in the American League playoffs. They're going to play each other potentially in the first round. And then the winner would get Texas. So, I think if you wanted to buy Astros futures, now might be the best time to do it, because everybody's doing this. Well, you can't just limp into the playoffs because they just got swept by the Royals. I think they lost a series to the A's. They lost 2 series to the Royals. I don't even know the numbers off the head, but there is 0.0 correlation between September performance and October performance in baseball playoffs. And I'm going to say that like 8 times on this pod in the next 2 weeks, but we have consistently seen teams limp into the playoffs and then just randomly get hot out of nowhere because of variance and just how baseball is. For example, last season, the Dodgers and the Braves destroyed in September. The Padres and the Phillies kind of struggled and were under 500 in September. Who played at the National League Championship? It was the Phillies and the Padres. So, the Astros are the team with, their pitching might be just rounding into form at the perfect time, even though they are certainly a threat to miss the playoffs if they lose tonight.
Yeah, and they still have the lineup to compete with every other American League lineup. It's not like I know we talk so much about how hard hitting the Rangers are and how deep and patient the Orioles are. The Astros have every bit that good of a lineup and every bit the star power from Yordan Alvarez to Chas McCormick to everyone down that lineup. Kyle Tucker, I mean. So yeah, I agree. Astros futures.
Astros.
They are still the 5th favorite, which is not as good as I thought they'd be, to be honest.
11-1
teams: Braves, Dodgers, Orioles, Rangers, then Astros, Rays, Phillies. So, interesting.
And to win the pennant, Orioles, looking at BetMGM, Orioles plus 280, Rangers plus 375, and the Astros and Rays are both at plus 500 to win the American League.
I see myself putting a wager on the Astros to win the American League by the end of the day, but we'll see.
Okay. Check the app. Follow Dabundo in the app if he does go that direction. Okay. So Dabundo already gave out the Astros. That's his underdog play today as well. And you got a good number, Dabundo. And I noticed that in the app. You got him at plus 124, which is good.
It'll get bought back. So I think you'll be able to get closer to plus 120 by the time we get toward game time in the next couple hours if there's buyback, which I do expect.
Tanner, an underdog for you on this 16-game slate. What jumps out?
The Miami Marlins, the Fish, do in fact have the tiebreak over both the Cubs and the Diamondbacks. So what does that mean? It means the Cubs need to fend off the Fish. I expect they do tonight. I think this is an easy one, taking them plus 115 on the money line against Bryce Elder and the Atlanta Braves. And the reason why I'm taking this is because give me Justin Steele over Bryce Elder. I don't think I even have to dive that deep into this one. Elder was the biggest fade candidate during the first half of the season. All that regression and more has come. He has a 5.4 ERA since the start of July. And look, yes, Steele has flailed out of this NL Cy Young race, thank goodness. But 2 bad starts shouldn't knock him that much in our, power ratings. And I think what's important about this matchup is that he puts the Braves in their worst split relatively. I mean, the Braves crush both sides. But over the past month, they're about 10% worse against southpaws than against right-handed pitching, and they're below average against southpaws over the past few weeks or so. I am worried about the Cubs' offense, which has seen major regression from their midseason super hot streak. But I'll take my shot fading Elder and backing Steele at pretty much any plus money odds. I'd also give the bullpen advantage to Chicago here. The Braves, crazy enough, have the highest bullpen FIP of any team in September. And it's kind of weird. I never really thought the back half of that bullpen was any good, and now it kind of seems like they're finally seeing some of that poor performance that I expected for so long. Anyways, the Cubs have been fine in the later part of the games, and of course, I think the Cubs have the motivational advantage. Again, Atlanta just won its 100th game. The Cubs are trying to hold off the Fish in the National League wildcard race and need to do so because they don't have the tiebreak. I'm fine fading the Braves, considering all of that, even though I told myself I'd stop fading the Braves a month ago. But give me the Cubs plus 115.
Is there any chance the Braves start sitting guys too? Is that crossing?
Anthony, I'll ask you.
The 1 seed. They have to win 3 more. The magic number is 3, so they need 3 Dodgers losses plus Braves wins to clinch the 1 seed, which they will certainly be playing for. I think the magic number is 2 over the Orioles in the American League, so they will do that at some point this week. They will get their results, and they will be the 1 seed. But I don't see a ton of resting. The Braves are, maybe they'll pull some guys, but not until they've clinched the top seed. So I do expect a full lineup. But the Braves are another team. Charlie Morton goes to the injured list. He's not going to pitch in the first round of the playoffs for them, which means Bryce Elder is going to start a playoff game, I think. That also means, Max Fried's on the injured list, and he's got a blister issue. They think he'll be back for the NLDS, but even the Braves with their bullpen and this rotation now, like as good as their lineup is, historically good, they could, I don't think anybody's infallible this year.
Stay tuned. And yes, the Dodgers, meanwhile, they're playing the Rockies this weekend or this week.
Yeah, they got to go to Coors, right?
Yep.
So that's a fun place to play.
Yeah, not a bad spot.
Get the bats hot before they get to the playoffs. Got to get hot before the playoffs.
Okay, Debundo, we spent time on the Marlins already. You do have a play on the Phillies, who are 1 win away from what they can win 1 more game. Is that what it is to get to 88? So folks that need them to go, if you have the 89.5 under, you've only got 2 more wins to work with. Yep.
And I do expect the Phillies to clinch the playoff spot tonight for the 2nd straight year. I've got the champagne ready. We host the Pirates. And again, the weather is a big factor. Aaron Nola, Mitch Keller. We've discussed Aaron Nola ad nauseum on this show, and now he's been worse this year. But one of the biggest things has been the home run issue. And he's allowed as many home runs as any pitcher in the National League this year. So he's up there with some of the worst guys. And that is a red flag, but it's less of a red flag in this environment where the temperature is going to be 59 degrees and the wind is going to be blowing in 15 miles an hour from right center. So that dramatically reduces the run environment. And then there's one other thing which is how the Phillies have been managing Nola. They've had bullpen action in the 4th and the 5th inning in his last 2 starts. I think you're starting to see that the Phillies are going to shorten the leash on Nola. And one of the biggest problems for him has been, 5th, 6th inning tacks, giving up a bunch of extra runs. I think they're preparing for a potential playoff situation next week where he's going to start game 2, and they may pull him in the 4th or 5th inning after he's become more of a 5 and dive type pitcher because they don't trust him. So the bullpen's rested. They have a ton of depth. Pittsburgh, I know Mitch Keller's stuff has been down, and that is a concern here. But I still think this total is too high at 7.5. So under 7.5 minus 115 is fine. It has taken some money. Opened 105. As I was trying to bet it, it kept moving. And I do think you're going to see that close closer to 7. So I like 7.5 under in that game.
Okay, that's it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. As always, Payoff Pitch has got one more episode, one more regular season episode that is on Friday before we hit the weekend and then get set for Payoff Pitch starting next week. Hopefully by Friday, more to come on details. It's going to be tough, though, because we need to get a schedule and we need to know who's playing when and who's playing who. So more to come. Stay tuned. Follow us in the Action Network app. You can find Debundo and Tanner on an individual basis. Also, check out actionnetwork.com for all of the latest written content as well. They'll have written content over the weekend once we find out some of those matchups and when MLB comes out with a schedule of some sorts. So there you go. For DeBundo and Tanner McGrath, Brendan Glasheen, thanks for listening and watching Payoff Pitch presented by BetMGM. We will talk to you all again at the end of the week. See you later.